Welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. And to many of you who might watch the recording later, also, thank you. And I want to welcome everyone today on behalf of Summit Impact and Summit Junto. And for anyone who I haven't met, my name is Shira. I'm the Executive Director of Summit Impact, and we're the nonprofit partner in the Summit ecosystem, focused exclusively on social good. Our mission is to steward resources and relationships towards social change leaders, so that together we can create a more regenerative and equitable future. And we do this using an impact labs model, where we gather business and creative leaders around specific topics like criminal justice and work with Summit Fellows to support their most critical objectives in the field. So we have one pilot lab running right now, the Criminal Justice Lab, which is part of this session. We're also launching a democracy lab next month and some more labs down the way on oceans, on future of work, on mental health. So we have a lot coming. Also, many of you here are part of Summit Junto, right? The Summit membership platform that curates 5 to 7 person forum groups of leaders to form mutual personal and professional advisory boards. And whether you're engaging in our Summit Impact programming in support of social change leaders, or joining Summit Junto programming for some collective learning, you'll notice there's a key theme across all Summit platforms, and that's the power of community. We believe that when it comes to entrepreneurship, to being creative, to building things that matter in the world, that no one can do this work alone. That being a leader means being collaborative. It means continuously growing and learning alongside others. It means both giving and receiving support. It also means connecting our inner world, our personal growth, to the systems and structures around us. So diving into the topic that's in focus today of harm and healing and forgiveness is one of the most profound ways that we believe we can do that. I'm so glad you're all here today for this shared learning, for everything we're going to uncover together. And I think we're all very, very fortunate to be joined by and featuring one of the fellows in our Criminal Justice Lab, Artie Gonzalez. Artie is the creative that almost never was. He was a juvenile tried as an adult at age 16. He spent 21 years of a life sentence in the California prison system, 8 of which included a supermax solitary confinement unit. But today, Artie is the creator and executive producer of the film series Lessons from a Lifer, which seeks to shift culture and build bridges between those who are systems impacted and our broader society. And I can tell you from having worked with Artie for quite a few months now that he's also one of the best storytellers I've ever met. So today, in this event, we're going to air some select clips from Artie's Lessons from a Lifer episode, where he interviews Leon Ford on the topic of forgiveness. We're going to interact with these clips a bit through guided meditations and exercises. And I'm going to start us off by playing an intro trailer to the episode now, and then I'll pass it over to Artie to say hello, and then also introduce our meditation teacher.
I spent 8 years of my life in solitary confinement. I certainly have struggled with forgiveness. If you cannot find a way to forgive yourself, you're not going to ever have the true strength that comes from surrender and vulnerability.
Exactly.
And I was able to basically give myself the gift of peace by releasing that.
I am Leon Ford, and I just got Lessons from a Lifer.
On this episode of Lessons from a Lifer, I sat down with author and activist Leon Ford to unpack the subject of forgiveness.
I'm a survivor.
Why forgive?
I struggled with anger
The struggles
and hatred.
and putting forgiveness into action.
I'm interested in solving problems.
If you have ever found yourself at the crossroad with forgiveness, and I built this internal prison for myself, you will not want to miss this powerful episode. And I chose to live there. Today's lesson begins now.
All right, that's just a taste of what we have coming up, a little bit more of what we're going to go into. But right now, I'd love to hand it over to Artie to say hello and just give us 1 minute on your work and why you're doing the storytelling work. And I'd love to invite everyone here, all of us, who are on the call to just welcome Artie in all the ways we know how over Zoom, with emojis and chat messages and applause and say hello, as Artie says hello to us. So Artie, go ahead.
I just want to welcome everybody, and I want to say thank you so much for your support. It's really great to see all your faces and so much love for the Summit community. You truly have gotten behind me, and it just means the world to me. I do see some faces I do not recognize. So as she said in my bio, my name is Artie Gonzalez. I am a formerly incarcerated person, and I'm also the creator and executive producer of a series that I'm calling Lessons from a Lifer. What I'm trying to do is, I realize that there is a gap, there's a bridge somewhere between me and you, and it's filled with the misunderstanding around what it means to be incarcerated or formerly incarcerated. I came out to a society that I found was very judgmental or had limiting beliefs around who I was supposed to be. And I realized that many of the universal wisdoms that were passed down to me from other men in blue over the years were useful tools in connecting me to you. For example, we all have our own forgiveness story. All of us have had to forgive at some point in our lives, whether it was forgiving ourselves or forgiving other people. And I realized that these shared common experiences, that's the glue, that's the bridge. You may not have done a life sentence, I may not have lived your life, but we can connect on that forgiveness path. And so what I wanted to do was take that, and I wanted to reduce it down to a series where every episode would have a topic such as forgiveness, and then we would delve into it. And in that, hopefully connect from my heart to your heart, and change the narrative, so to speak, around what it means to be incarcerated. So that's me in a nutshell. That's what I'm here trying to do. And I can't wait for you guys to watch clips from the first episode, in which I interviewed Leon Ford, who was shot by police and paralyzed during severe case of police brutality a few years back, mistaken identity. He survived somehow. He went through a tremendous forgiveness story and forgiveness path, lots of resentment and anger, and eventually came out of the other side in full forgiveness mode, and is now an activist and a speaker and an advocate for forgiveness. So can't wait for you guys to watch. Thank you.
We're excited to get to hear more from you in just a bit. And thank you for that framing. We're also really fortunate today to be joined by an amazing meditation teacher, Yael Shai. Yael is the CEO of Mindfulness Consulting, where she offers transformative mindfulness coaching, consulting, and teaching. She's also the author of an award-winning book, What Now? Meditation for Your 20s and Beyond, and has been studying and teaching meditation in Buddhist, Jewish, and secular contexts for over 20 years. And some of you know that I've had the benefit of meeting many meditation teachers, really since I first stumbled into my first silent meditation retreat when I was just 23. But I can tell you that Yael Shai is a really special teacher who brings a particular blend of relatability and deep insight that I'm excited for her to get to share with you all today. So in just a minute, I'm going to invite Yael to lead us in a teaching about forgiveness to start us off. And the idea is that she's going to provide us with some initial grounding. So as we dive deeper into Artie's episode, we can start to internally reflect on how we connect to this topic. Our goal by the end of the session is really to leave feeling like we learned more about Artie, we learned more about ourselves, and we've taken some action to bring greater connection and compassion into the world. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Yael. Again, I invite you to welcome her on the chat with emojis, however you'd like to, over Zoom, and she'll guide us into an opening teaching.
Thank you so much, Shira. I feel very, very honored to be here with you and all, and especially to be here with Artie, who is definitely a personal hero. Forgiveness is quite a topic, and how do we begin this work of kind of checking in with ourselves, our own bodies, our own hearts, of what comes up for us when we think about this topic? And it can come up in two ways. One of them is thinking about the people in our life that have harmed us and the difficulties perhaps in forgiving them, wherever we are in our own personal forgiveness journey. And the other way it might come up for you is kind of taking stock or knowing that there are people that you may have harmed, and the difficulty and the pain of holding that, whether or not they have forgiven you or not. The question is, do you forgive yourself? And what does it mean to like be worthy of that forgiveness? So I want to just kind of have us think about the main misconceptions about forgiveness. So the kind of easy throwaway ways that we think about forgiveness is often that it means you reuniting with the person that you're forgiving. Definitely not the case. It can be maybe for some people, but it's certainly, is not wise in every case. It's not possible in many cases. And so forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation or reuniting. And Maya Angelou had a beautiful interview about forgiveness. And she talks about it this way, about this erroneous connection to reconciliation, where she says, I forgive people so that they don't continue to have power over me. That does not mean that when a fire burns me, I put my hand back in the fire. It doesn't mean we do that. So that's misconception number one that we want to kind of let go of. Misconception number two, in my experience, is really hard. And it's this deep down idea that forgiveness means forgetting. And that is actually, interestingly, at the root of the word forgiveness. From it's the Old English word that refers to geffen, means to give up completely, is the fur, and that's how we get geffen, forgiveness, and to give up completely. And that's kind of our first idea when we think about forgiveness. But the trouble with that is that it's in our hearts, in our minds, it can feel like we're saying that the harm didn't matter, either the harm we did for someone else or the harm to ourselves. I want to share some words by the poet Mark Nebo. I'm going to put them in the chat in case you want to read them, because sometimes it's a little easier to do that. And this, I'll read it out as well. The pain was necessary to know the truth, but we don't have to keep the pain alive to keep the truth alive. This is what has kept me from forgiveness. The feeling that all I've been through will evaporate if I don't relive it. That if those who hurt me don't see what they've done, my suffering will have been for nothing. What it really comes down to is the clearness of the heart to stop defining who I am by those who hurt me and take up the risk to love myself, to validate my own existence, pain and all, from the center out. And I think as this program continues, we can just ask yourself the question, am I trying to keep the pain alive to validate the fact that it happened? And is there another way? Can we say, this really happened? This is so terrible and awful and should never have happened. And I'm not going to carry it anymore, because that carrying hurts, and it prevents from the gifts that we have to bring into the world fully, including all parts of ourselves. And so that's where I want to leave us. And I think the last little point, just to make sure and mention, is that forgiveness is not something that you can ever tell someone else to do. This is a journey, and each person has to find their own way, not for the other person, not for the person that hurt them, but for themselves, to unburden, to alleviate the pain of holding on to what happened, to that pain. And so that's the journey. And I'm excited to continue to delve deeper with all of you.
What beautiful framing for us as we dive in. And we're going to play the first clip from Artie's episode. We played the trailer. We're going to play the first clip from the actual episode now, and invite you to hold that teaching with you about what we might be carrying, about if there's another way, about why forgive, and also to know that just check in with your own experience throughout the session. Some really deep, heavy things could come up. To always know you can go back to grounding yourself with your feet on the floor, or kind of like looking around the room that you're in, and just choose how much you want to go into the deeper stuff that's coming up for you. And so with that, I'm really excited to play this first clip.
You have every reason I can think of to never forgive. So why forgive?
I just realized that I would suffer more. It's like carrying that poison, man, and I had to make a conscious decision. It was a tough decision, right, to let go so that I can have a good quality of life. How do I want to live my life? I was shot. I can't change what happened to me, but I do want to have a good future. And I don't want to give anybody the power, right, to take that away from me. I remember when, my son was maybe, 1.5 and he's like learning to walk. And I remember just being consumed with so much hatred that I couldn't enjoy that moment, right? I was more consumed with, this officer, how that made me feel. And so I couldn't be fully present as a father. And I felt like...
You're blocked from your own blessings.
Exactly.
It's not just letting it go, but then that opens the space to be filled again.
Exactly.
And I was able to basically give myself the gift of peace.
So now we're going to invite you with that first clip about what it means to give ourselves the gift of peace, to gather your pencil or pen, something to write with or type with, and have 3 minutes. We're going to play a little bit of music. You have 3 minutes just to reflect on this question. What is one area of your life where you are still holding on to something? Some anger or a grudge, where you could use some forgiveness for your own sake. Where might you be blocked from your own blessings? Where might you be able to open up? What's still there for you? So let's play some music and we'll do a little bit of writing reflection just for 3 minutes. I hope that gave you a minute just to identify what might be coming up in your life that relates to our topic today. Just start to go into it. And when it comes to facing these areas where forgiveness is most needed for each of us, it's not so easy to do, right? These areas where we're, in Artie's word, blocked from our own blessings and trying to find peace, it's important to acknowledge that this is actually really painful and challenging work sometimes. We're not trying to make it seem like we're sugarcoating it or that this is light. This can be heavy. And so we're going to play a clip now that speaks to that a little bit and shows you how Leon and Artie talk about the depth of facing the darkness and also choosing life.
It's amazing what you're telling me, because I'm thinking back to how this started. This was something that was done to you. It's irreparable. This person shot you 5 times, point blank range. They've taken your ability to walk. And you're here and you're talking about mindfulness and about right living and well-being. And it just blows my mind, because when you're back in that moment, when this happened to you, I just want people to have an understanding of how extreme it can get emotionally in this sense.
Right.
The intensity of the anger and the hatred, and this is an injustice that has occurred, must have taken you to dark places, the darkest.
Yeah.
How did you really feel when this happened?
When I was shot, I felt violated. And I had 2 choices. Either I was going to die or I was going to live. right? And what I mean by that is like I contemplated retaliation against these officers. One, I was suicidal, and if I wanted to kill myself, you can imagine how
Right.
dark my thoughts were in regards to retaliation. But the thing is, I had a son, right, who was born when I was in the hospital. If you can imagine, just being
Wow.
in the darkest mindset
Yeah.
of my life. And then I have this light, right? My son being born. And it's like, yo, who's gonna raise him if I died? Right? And I could still be a father despite being in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
My son was really the catalyst that made me choose to live.
That's incredible. How do you balance something like that? Such darkness, and into the world comes such light. In this sense, it really puts you at a crossroads where you have to make a decision: am I going in that direction, or am I going towards this new light that needs me?
Yeah, and it was a journey, right? It was a very complicated journey. How do you have, peace of mind? And I think that's where I began to think about therapy.
And you've been very open and honest about the fact that you see a therapist once a week.
Absolutely.
How would you say forgiveness ties into your therapeutic efforts?
Going to therapy has helped me, to inquire about like, yo, why do I feel frustrated or impatient? And to like really take a deep dive into not just the moment that I was shot, but some things that I experienced that I didn't even remember. It's interesting because I began to process my life, and I remember the first moment where I kind of suppressed my emotions. I was 5 years old, and my older cousin was shot and killed. And I remember, being at the funeral, and I'm watching his dad, which is my uncle, kind of greet people. He's smiling and he's, cracking jokes and trying to make people feel comfortable. But it's his son laying in the casket, but he's trying to be strong,
Right.
for everybody in the family. And I remember after the funeral, I ran up to my dad and I said, "Dad, guess what?" And I said, "I didn't cry." And I was so proud that I didn't cry at this funeral.
Right.
And that was my first, memory suppressing my emotions. And then, to fast forward to when I was shot, I remember my first visit from my family, and they were crying. And, although I was experiencing so much pain, I was the one smiling. And I was telling my parents and my cousins and siblings that, no, I'm fine, I'm cool, and I'm cracking jokes. That was my mentality for years after I got shot. I would be smiling and suppressing all this pain. And, it just got to a point where I realized that, this isn't sustainable. Although I was getting all these different awards and stuff for leadership, I felt like I was dying on the inside, and I just had to release it. Now I just encourage people, just to be open-minded about therapy and to try it.
All right. So just a little bit of really going into that depth, right? That it's not so easy. And there's some big choices. And also what I love that Artie and Leon share here is that we all need support. We all need support. That's what's so special about coming together in a kind of collective learning space like this. No one's alone in their own journey of forgiveness. We all need some support to get through, especially the darker points. So now we have another clip I want to share. And this is really the central clip, actually, of the episode and of this session. It's really special. So I just want to invite everyone to tune in to this next clip and these two parallel stories of forgiveness.
I've always wondered, the officer who shot you, I know that he has never been charged. He doesn't have, he's never been convicted of any crimes. So he was not criminalized for what he did to you. Has he ever asked you for your forgiveness?
So I actually met the officer that shot me. You know, body language and energy says so much, you know, and from his energy, from the body language, it was more than an apology, right? There was like a sense of, you know, admiration, and there was hope, right? So he never, you know, said like, yo, you know, I'm so sorry, right? But anybody can say they're sorry.
You felt coming from him the emotion of the apology,
Exactly.
if not the words.
Exactly, the emotion, the sincerity in his eyes. You know, I thought meeting him was about me, but I think now it was more about him, that, you know, he does struggle for what happened to me. And I believe that he's at the beginning of his healing journey and what that looks like for him. And, you know, we've had conversations about that because you said before, like, yo, somebody caused me pain, but then on the flip side of that coin, you had caused somebody pain and you had to figure out, you know, how to forgive yourself.
I've certainly have struggled with forgiveness, deeply actually. I come from the standpoint, as you said, from the other side of the coin. My struggle was with self-forgiveness. That was the area that I had problems with. I've always been very clear that I grew up in a very abusive, traumatic childhood, and also in a neighborhood, in an environment that itself is just traumatic every day and violence-based. And I had a lot of forgiving I had to do on my end for those things. That was so much easier than forgiving myself. In my case, I also caused someone irreparable harm. I could not fix what I had done. I could not restore them back to what I took from them. And so I started to develop self-loathing and a lot of shame and a lot of guilt that was just deeply embedded in me. And I would say the struggle, though, the pain point, it wasn't that I was experiencing these emotions. That wasn't the struggle as much. It was the fact that I had convinced myself that I deserved these emotions. I deserved to feel shame, and I deserved to feel guilt. I deserved my own self-loathing. That was my true punishment for my crime. It was a just sentence, and there was no way out of it. And I built this internal prison for myself, and I chose to live there because I felt that that was justice at the time. I felt like my own suffering was somehow honoring my victim. It was this barrier between myself and forgiveness that I just could not overcome. I couldn't get past it. And the thought of changing that, what would my life look like if I didn't have shame, if I didn't have self-loathing, if I loved myself? That was terrifying for me. And so I was afraid of change. I was afraid of letting go. And that was a part of the shackles that I put onto that prison.
Wow.
You know,
When I think about my journey to forgiveness, right, I had a lot of family around me. I had a lot of support. I'm interested in finding out, when did your journey to forgive start?
I spent 8 years of my life in solitary confinement on 21 years that I did on a life sentence. They had deemed that I was too dangerous for even the dangerous people. To get to a level of forgiveness, there must be courage, there must be some level of vulnerability, and the conditions I was living in were not conducive to vulnerability. You can't cry in there. There's no one to vent to.
So, did you have a safe space?
You know, I didn't have access to therapy, but I was able to find a pen pal. I have never seen this person in real life.
Wow.
And he did everything for me. Like, he has no idea. He took me through these steps and he started to show me how I could live my life according to spiritual principles as opposed to defects of character. If I'm operating from a position of hate, I can choose to operate from love. And he helped me start that process. So when it came to forgiveness, we went back and forth, I don't know how many times. And I was like, I forgive everyone that has done anything to me. And anyone who's ever asked me for forgiveness, I'm giving it. And I was so proud of myself, but I couldn't forgive myself. And he was clear with me. He said, if you cannot find a way to forgive yourself, you're not going to ever have the true strength that comes from surrender and vulnerability. And he finally got frustrated with me one time because I told him, I can't make amends for this. Like what I've taken from this person, I can't even ask them for their forgiveness because they're not here anymore. I took their life. So I don't know what I'm going to do. And he finally had the breakthrough that saved my life with forgiveness. He told me, you know, it's so interesting that we, as human beings, it's so easy for us to find fault in ourselves and in others. And it's so difficult for us to see the good in others and to see the good in ourselves. You treat your victim and the survivors of your crime, you treat them like they're only one-dimensional people. You only acknowledge them based on the side of them that wants you to suffer, that's angry about what you did. You think you're honoring them because you're honoring their resentful side. And so you think that by not forgiving yourself, you are somehow honoring that. But that's one-dimensional. They have a whole other side, and so did the victim of your crime. Your victim had a loving side too. His family, they also operate from a standpoint of love and compassion and hope and empathy and all of these positive, enlightened things. And the side of the person that you've harmed, who operates from a position of love, would not want you to suffer like this.
Wow.
This side of this person has already forgiven you. And it's a shame that this has already happened and you haven't forgiven yourself. They would want you to forgive yourself and really honor them. Don't do the things that would honor the side of them that hate you. Do the things that they can't do anymore from the loving side of themselves. How would they have touched the world? Whose lives would they have positively impacted? You can choose to forgive yourself and operate from that standpoint and let that motivate you. And that was the breakthrough for me because it finally allowed me to accept forgiveness for myself with the permission of the person I had harmed. And it was like the floodgates opened after that. Yeah.
Really beautiful, powerful clip, right? Powerful reflection and framing from Artie. And we're going to play one more 3 minutes, and then we're going to go into a meditation exercise. One more quick clip to also frame a little bit more of this conversation. And just how special for us to one that get to view this work of Artie's and to have Artie in this room with us. There's something so beautiful and powerful and genuine about the way he helps us all understand this topic. So just calling our attention that like we're really in this learning together. And we'll play one more clip and then go into our meditation.
Like a divine strength that is associated with vulnerability. That kind of makes you like a superhero.
What it did was it started to make me feel like I was able to accept that the past is unchanging. I can't do anything to alter it. That being said, my forgiving myself or forgiving others, it's not a statement that it was okay. And no, that's not the case. I made the wrong choice, and it greatly affected the lives of others. Forgiving myself or forgiving others does not make what happened okay. What it does is it opens me up to actually honoring it in a new way and seeing it from a different standpoint. And it starts to influence my behaviors.
Yeah, it reminds me of mindfulness, right? And that's another step toward, forgiveness, creating space for awareness.
With that awareness comes the self-love,
Yeah.
the wanting something better for yourself, the desire to see better for others because you can relate to yourself in a humanistic way.
So now we're going to pass it back over to Yael. There's so much in these past two clips, so much. And a lot about how forgiveness can work and what it means to honor the loving parts of ourselves and others. So we're going to hand it back to Yael to lead us into an exercise that starts to bring some of this awareness that Leon and Artie just spoke about into our practice of forgiveness. Yael, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm going to guide us in a meditation that will help to do exactly what was just talked about, to kind of bring some of that spaciousness into our hearts and into our bodies, and just to be with ourselves. The act of meditation itself is kind of like a continual act of forgiveness and a continual act of love, because we're always bringing ourselves back. When our mind wanders and goes to different places, we say, I am worthy of being with myself. I am worthy of the love and the attention of just staying present. And so I'm going to guide us through that. But what I want to say first is this maybe already has and definitely can bring up a lot for a lot of people. And it might be too much, actually. And so please take care of yourself. And if you want to do this with your eyes open, do that. If you want to, take a walk, not listen to me, do that. Just please make sure and take care of yourself throughout this process. And as you're getting yourself comfortable, you can just look all around you. Notice where you're sitting. Notice your particular location in the room. You can close your eyes. You're always welcome to keep them just softly focused in front of you. And I find it comforting and to kind of introduce this loving attention, to put a hand on my heart, on my chest, maybe a hand on the belly. If that helps you, if that feels comforting to you as well, you're welcome to do that. And start by just taking a few deep breaths, relaxing your shoulders, relaxing your jaw. Just noticing what's happening inside you right now, what has been stirred up from this conversation. Maybe painful feelings, maybe just total heartwarming, loving feelings. Maybe noticing where you are struggling to forgive or to forgive yourself. Whatever is arising for you is okay. As best as you can, try and welcome all the various feelings, all the thoughts moving through, building inside of yourself a safe place for these thoughts and feelings to come in, to go out, to take up some residence. Feeling the seat underneath you, able to hold everything that's coming up. The earth underneath you. You can put a hand down below if it helps you to feel grounded, to feel that support. Almost like the depths of a deep, deep well or the ocean. It's not bothered by the waves on top. It doesn't need to stop the waves. You can just drop into that depth, that vastness that can hold everything. And let each breath drop you there. Your thoughts may be bringing you to things that you have to do later, to mundane stuff, or maybe not so mundane stuff. That's thoughts, those are the waves on the ocean. You can keep dropping in to find that stability and that depth inside you in this moment. Continuing to relax, continuing to soften, bringing ease into your body. Feeling that support of your seat underneath you, the ground under your feet. You're welcome to stay here, just resting in that rise and fall of your breath. Or if you'd like, you could bring to mind a time when you forgave someone. It can be for something small, it could be for something large, but a time when you really authentically forgave someone for something they did wrong. And you can try and bring to mind, what were the steps? How did you get from the harm to the forgiveness? And how did you know you had forgiven them? What did it feel like in your body? What does it feel like now when you bring them to mind? What can you see now about the situation that maybe you couldn't before? And again, just dropping into that feeling of what it feels like to have forgiven someone, to not carry that burden of the anger anymore. So knowing that you have that capacity, that you have that ability, you can now bring to mind maybe either another person or yourself or someone that you are having a hard time forgiving. You do not need to push it. You don't need to try and force your way to forgiveness. That never works. But you can just notice there's the pain there. That pain wants to be seen. Wherever you are in the process, journey, there is still some pain there that needs to be seen. And so we want to just hold that pain, to tell that pain, we see you. We believe you. We validate you. It is making it very hard to forgive. And you can just in your inhales and exhales, bring love to that pain. I see you. I feel you. I'm going to take care of you. Each breath just soothing that part that's still having a hard time. Remembering that the capacity for forgiveness is within you and it will happen when it's ready. And you can release everything except just dropping into this moment. A few more breaths. Feeling your body once again on the seat. Your breath rising and falling, bringing you life. Your clothes against your skin. Any sounds coming in, any other prominent sensations you feel. And if your eyes are closed, you can begin to gently open them. Bringing yourself back to this moment and back to our room.
Thank you, Yael. You all feel that like there's kind of a calm energy here. But so much has really just happened over the course of the session. We witnessed some really profound, beautiful storytelling. We do have a few more clips, like one more really, to play later on. And we kind of started to do this more internal process, checking in with ourselves and our own connection to forgiveness. And what we're going to do now is open up for a bit of Q&A. And then we'll do a clip and then or a breakout session. And then we'll close this on the next half hour. But for anyone who does need to leave at the top of the hour, we just want to say we've dropped some information in the chat about our summer gathering, an event happening next month for the Criminal Justice Lab, where we could do more of this, but also engage in person in LA. And we also encourage anyone who's part of Junto to keep this conversation going. If something moved for you, if you're feeling connected, keep this going within your Junto group. Bring it into the forefront. And also, if you're interested in what Summit Junto is, we'll drop and share some links in our follow-up for everyone as well. So with that, I'd love to just pause and get to hear from Artie a bit more. And also, Yael, if anyone has questions, and open it up for a Q&A. What questions are on your heart right now around the topic of forgiveness? And I know there was one, you can drop the questions in the chat and then or raise your hand and we'll call on you to ask them. And the question I think is to Artie, but then also Yael can chime in of what habits do you actually cultivate on a regular basis to keep coming back to this forgiveness approach, to make it part of your daily life?
Was that question for me, Shira?
Yeah, I think you can start us off there.
Okay.
Or if there's anything else you want to say, Artie.
No, that's all right.
We just love to hear.
I was still in this moment here. That was phenomenal. I would say that I agree. I've actually said that quite often, that I believe that forgiveness is more of a discipline than it is, say, a feeling or an emotion. I feel that one of the pitfalls about forgiveness is that many of us tend to view forgiveness as a one-off event. It's sort of like you've made a decision and then it's happened and then it's done. And I found in my case that was simply not the way that it is. It definitely requires me, even now, I've been home for almost 7 years. It requires me to wake up every day with forgiveness in my heart. I have to choose it every day. I came to a point where I forgave myself, but now there's maintenance involved. There's a conscious effort that has to take place on my part to willingly forgive myself every day. And when you talk about practice and habits, it's really that. Like one of the daily routines that I had in prison was I would wake up in the morning, I would brush my teeth, and you guys have all heard of the chow hall, right? So I'm getting ready to go to breakfast in the chow hall. But before all of that craziness, I would sit on my bunk and I would just have inner dialogue with myself. And a lot of that inner dialogue was self-affirming. It was positive. I was attempting to manifest positivity in my environment. I told myself today is going to be a great day. I don't know how, but some way today I'm going to positively affect the life of another person. Today I will love myself. I stand in forgiveness. I walk with forgiveness. It's essentially who I am, and I embrace myself. I love myself. I would tell myself these things, and then I would go to the craziness that is the chow hall and the noise and the people and the vulgarities and the violence-based environment. And I would step into that, but I would do it with a shield around myself. And that shield was forgiveness. And it was something that I have to choose every day. Now out here, it's a bit of a different situation, of course, but the process nonetheless is quite the same. So I would say that it's something you have to choose every day. It's a discipline that you have to develop in your own lives. It's something that you have to wake up and just be conscious about and self-aware enough to realize my forgiveness might actually be waning right now. There's certain events that could be happening in my life that trigger the lack of forgiveness side of myself and taking me back to that trauma or that pain. It's not entirely gone, and that is okay, but it does not have to rule over our lives, nor do we have to put our hand back into that fire, but we can acknowledge that it persists. So must our discipline. If it will never entirely go away, then neither must my resolve to forgive myself every day. That's the habit. That's the daily discipline. So that's my answer to that question.
Beautiful. Anything you'd like to add, Yael? Or move on to the next one?
It's so beautiful. I totally agree. And I think most of us had years and years and years where we were told we were not worthy of love, or that, we were shown with behavior that we were not worthy of love. And so just the amount of time it takes to rebuild that is what I thought of when you said that, Artie, that it just requires like a whole lot of rebuilding from the inside.
Beautiful. Thank you, Yael.
By the way, this is lovely to hear this from a forgiveness expert. I was a little nervous about answering these questions based from my experience, but I'm also in the room with someone that is quite expert in this field. So
that's how I feel about you.
Oh, yeah, Yeah, exactly. I think we got multiple forgiveness experts in this.
Yeah, right.
We have one more question that came in, and before I go to that one that was written in, did anyone else raise their hand? I'm not missing anything. Someone who wanted to. So one more, and actually, as I ask this question, we're also going to drop Artie's email in the chat, and we'll also send it out over email to people. But I encourage you right now, and as we're in this kind of last segment, to just be thinking about these stories of forgiveness and connection and how we might amplify them. You know, and who might you know that could be helpful to Artie in building his storytelling platform, his multimedia platform that will include a book proposal, more episodes like this, a mini documentary. You want to help build a multimedia storytelling campaign. Summit Impact is already working with Artie to do that and worked with him on his first episode. But this all really comes from a community effort. So just start to keep in mind, like, you know, is there anyone you might offer to Artie as a connection, or just be willing to take a call with him to see, to just connect with him, or to send him some lovely words of support and encouragement, you know, just like what's some loving action step that you can take that supports this work of storytelling and of opening everyone's hearts and minds, just like all of us are able to be open today. And then I'll share, as we think about that, one more question here, which is, Artie, can you also walk us through, like, if you are wronged in some way today, something happens, what's your process like? When someone does something that hurts you, harms you in some way today, big or small, like, where does your mind go and what do you do next?
That's a pretty deep question. It's taken me a lot of years to have a much more conscious response. For so many years, I operated off of automatic thoughts, automatic behaviors. If you say A to me, then B happens. And it was just like that. It was automatic. And I didn't understand at the time that between what is happening to me and what I do about it, there's a space in which I have choice. And I really didn't understand that until later in life. And I've become much more adept at practicing that, at seizing that small space, that tiny briefest of spaces between what is happening to me and how I'm being triggered and what my response is. It's just enough time to, for example, take me back to my teachings, things that the people gave me. 99 to, I would just say 100% of my rehabilitation came from other people in blue. It was not, I did not change because the system changed me. I did not change because my punishment changed me. I changed because I made a decision, and then I had plenty of other people who were suffering alongside of me who had wisdom to give me. And in that wisdom, they taught me about that space. So it's a practice. It's not something I'm ever perfect at. And that's the other thing, like, we just can't knock ourselves or be hard on ourselves. There's going to be times when you encounter something big or small that triggers you, re-traumatizes you, and your response is not going to be the most ideal. And you have to have forgiveness for yourself in those moments, because that's how deep it is. And we've also been deeply conditioned to not forgive. We live in a society that is pretty anti-forgiveness, and it's more self-righteous in the sense that it's based upon judgment rather than release. And so I'm basically cultivating in myself something foreign to me from the time I've been born in this country till now, and foreign to my personal experience. But basically that's what happens. If it could be something small, and I'm not always perfect, but I do my best to live in that space, to draw from it. And hopefully my response 9 out of 10 times is the compassionate, forgiving one.
Beautiful, Artie. You teach us so much every time. This is how cool it is to get to collaborate and work with Artie. Like, this is what it's like to be in conversation with him daily. And you know, Artie, you always just help, like, me personally expand how I think about something, see it a little bit differently, affirm something I thought I knew, and was practicing, but the way that you frame it is so compelling. Thank you. Yael, anything you want to add to that question? And yeah, anything you want to add first?
I don't think so. I think it was beautifully said.
Great. Well, with that, I think we're going to play the kind of final clip segment here. And this one really, kind of zooms out a little bit and covers just how much forgiveness is a process between people, sometimes between entire races, and what it means to really keep an open heart, which is so much of what we've been talking about today. So we're going to play this clip, and then we'll phase into the final section of this event. Go ahead.
We live in a society today where obviously race is that's at the top of the list.
Right.
And there certainly is a racial component to what happened to you. And there has been a racial component to your forgiveness. I would like you to talk about how, from a racial standpoint, how were you able to get to the point where this happened to me? Let's just say I hate all white people at this moment. But then there was a way where you came out of that, where you started not to feel that way. But there must have been a process to get you to that. So how did you do that? Because this might help someone who's going through the same thing, who feels this same way about America right now, who feels the same way about police right now, or is on the opposite side and feels the same way about BLM or any other movements that are social justice or racially based. Everyone's struggling in their own way.
Right.
And how you got through your process might actually help somebody.
Yeah. I remember, just being full of that hatred. And my 6th grade teacher came to visit me while I was in the hospital. And this is when I swore up and down I hated all white people. And here she comes in, a white woman with her blonde hair. And I was just like, well, I hate all white people but her.
Okay, right? The exception to the rule.
She was the exception, right? Then I had some really, phenomenal nurses. And I would say, well, I hate all white people but them, right?
Right.
And then my heart,
It's starting to expand out.
and I didn't want my heart to become hardened.
Yeah.
I didn't want, this moment to change my heart. Also, I have family members who are police officers, right? And I would say, well, I hate all police officers but them,
Yeah.
And so what I realized is that, it's much more complicated than people make it seem. But you realize it's systemic because the same things are happening all over the country, right?
Yeah.
I could just stay on social media and, say fuck the police all day. Or I could try something different. And my perspective was really guided, by my role as a father, right? I remember someone inquired about, how are you preparing your son for the world? And I thought about that deeply and how my parents prepared me for the world. And they told me all these different things to do and not to do, right? They gave me the talk.
Right.
Talk. And I still got shot by a police officer.
Yeah.
Right? And I realized that my parents preparing me for the world wasn't enough. So I thought about, well, how do I prepare the world for my son? And the way I decided to do that is by building relationships. One of the things is I can go on social media all day and, attack the chief of police in Pittsburgh or the mayor, which I have done before, right? If you go years
Back
down,
to the early years.
yeah, you'll see me calling them racist. But then something in my heart said, well, how about, instead of criticizing them, how about you stand in the gap and you help them lead?
Wow.
And that's what I did, right? And I reached out and began building these relationships and solving problems. And so now, I have friends who are Republican, Democrats, independent, Muslim, Jewish, Jehovah's Witness. It doesn't matter, right? I'm interested in building community and solving problems. And that is more important to me than holding a grudge.
I just love that line about not wanting, Leon's heart to become hardened and what it takes. Yeah, Artie?
No, Leon, he's such a powerful, I mean, you guys, I think he's not even 30 yet. He might, I think he's like 29 or he's about to be 30. And his depth and wisdom is just, it blows me away. Yeah, just in awe of Leon all the time. So.
Yeah, he's incredible. And for anyone who's been at some of the Summit LA events, Leon's a past Summit speaker. He's like Artie, like a light and nicest guy, and so wonderful to be around, and then shares such remarkable wisdom here. And I know that we're getting towards the end of the session, and what we want to do now is kind of do two things to start to close us out here. One is just to share with everyone about how you can stay involved, stay connected, keep this thread going when it comes to forgiveness, when it comes to Artie's work, when it comes to Summit Impact, at Summit Junto, wherever you fall in the mix of this community. So one thing that you can do is, like we said, we're sharing Artie's email. You can follow up with Artie directly. Whether that's just with some kind words, whether that's with a connection you think that might be helpful, just follow up with Artie, kind of take some loving, kind action step to thank him for his storytelling today.
I take all the vibes. Hit me up. I'll talk back, I promise.
Exactly. Another thing you can do, as I mentioned earlier, is join us at our Criminal Justice Lab weekend that we're hosting in LA, July 7th through 9th. It's coming up pretty soon. It's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And we still have some spots available, and we would love to see you. We're going to be having immersive learning, connection, music, meals with all of our fellows at the Criminal Justice Lab and with the wider Summit community, and we would love to see you there. We also want to mention that some of you are part of the Junto program. Like I said before, we encourage you to just keep this conversation going. Bring it into your Junto group. See what's alive for you in these groups that are designated to help support each other and navigate the most interesting and important and challenging parts of life. And if you're new to Summit Junto, you'll see more about it in the follow-up email, so you can explore it. And so those are the main ways that we're inviting you to stay in touch. Connect with Artie, attend our events, explore Summit Impact and Summit Junto as platforms where you might want to engage. But mostly, really the whole point of this is that there are systems of incarceration in the US that are not adequately set up to really act out any of the things that we've learned today around healing and forgiveness. We know that there's tremendous injustice in our current systems. And so doing this work to support Artie of supporting his storytelling platform, getting involved in our criminal justice work at Summit Impact, it's all about how we do both this internal reflective healing process and how we see it come out into the world in the most loving way. It has to happen both of them. So we invite you to engage and just to start thinking about it that way. And so I think what we're going to do here is just open the floor if anyone wants to share a comment, a closing thought, anything that's landed for you. We were going to do breakouts, but I know a few people are in transit, and breakouts can end up sending lots of people into rooms with someone else who can't exactly speak to them in that moment. So we're going to just open the floor for anyone who wants to share something, where things are landing for you. And then we'll close with like a minute of kind of, 1 minute closing clip, and a minute of guided meditation breathing. And then that'll be the end. Would anyone like to share?
Just want to say thank you, Artie, for sharing and for your beautiful storytelling. It really allows one to connect and look inwards too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sherry, I can share something.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, Artie, well, thank you very much for sharing. It's very powerful, and nerve-wracking inside right now, because I sympathize with you, but I leave the other side on. When I was looking at the kids that killed my brother on the courtroom across it, I saw there was 4 of them. I saw 3 of them with a sense of regret, but one of them, which is the guy that pulled the trigger, I couldn't see any regret. I couldn't see any, and I felt so sorry for him. At the same time, I was pissed because my mom and my sisters were right next to me, and the pain that it was caused by the loss of my brother, that way happened. That's the moment when I realized I have to forgive the difference between forgetting and forgiveness, because it was something that I couldn't put in words, but I was very grateful that I was in a position in my life that I was able to do it very early on, because I don't know the only way that I was able to manage the things that come with someone's death, the logistical things that come with it, which is real, right? You have to pay when someone's died, you have to manage all this. And then I had to tackle all that stuff on the moment while I was had to deal with the pain.
Mhm.
The only way I was able to do that was by forgiving very early, which I couldn't really put on words. I couldn't really put it out there. I just felt it. And it's such a feeling that I didn't do it for those individuals. I did it for myself. And I did it to be in a position to help my family. And it was sort of like not instant, but it was sort of very quick turnaround. That's why I'm only able to do that because who I became through my life. I don't think I would be able to do that maybe even 4 years ago. That was for the moment. And then as moving forward with grieving as well, like it just helps. I mean, it's the pain. I don't feel anger, but I feel frustrated and I feel a lot of pain. But I don't think I feel anger. I don't think I feel this sort of heavy darkness thing hardened my heart. It's almost like precisely because I try to keep my heart soft and open, it is just painful. And it's burning, but it's not hardening, you know. So I guess that question, I don't think I have actually truly gone through my grieving, and I done it in little pieces like today, but sometimes I'm scared to go there, and this is a moment that I take as part of that grieving, sharing, because maybe someone within the members is just dealing with someone similar, or someone that is able to hear or get this message. And I think the way that I told my family about that moment is the best we can do for my brother is take his soul and expand it across. And I think by sharing these experiences, we can do that. And if anybody, it's changed and by it, then that's the best justice we can do. And I think that's the best embodiment to put into forgiveness instead of actually explaining it. So I'd rather like do it than explain it. So I just want to share that, and I want to share the love, and thank you very much, Artie Gonzalez, because I think it was even harder for you, because I imagine putting myself in the position of being the one that caused it. It's even worse, because you're holding the gun metaphorically and actually physically, right? But and it caused it. I can imagine the pain that you're going through to see yourself in the mirror, and then to be able to now see yourself and then be good with yourself. So I commend you for that.
Thank you so much for that share. I don't know if I'm able to respond.
Yeah,
Sure.
if you'd like to, for sure.
I want to say that I actually have come to a point where I don't view the pain that I went through in my self-forgiveness struggle as greater than those who I've harmed, such as yourself. I think it all matters, and I think it's all weighty. And I want you to know, from someone who has committed the crime that took it was your brother, right? So the crime that took your brother, being someone on this side, the most powerful transformational thing I ever did in prison was to take a victims awareness course. It put me in touch with survivors of crime for the first time in my life. And it really put my face and my mind and my heart into what you experience on your side. It was the first time that my empathy had been reactivated. The reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, this is a living amends for me. I honor my victims and survivors of crime by doing the work that I do, because I don't ever want anyone to forget my victim. And we have been taught that we are on opposite sides of the fence when truly we are not. We are one community, we are one society. And currently the justice system is formed to a point where I get life sentence, I get sent away, and you and your family get forgotten. And no one ever follows up with you to ask how you're doing or what your needs are. What did you need in that moment? We live in a justice system that feels like the life sentence itself, that is delivering you what you want. But we don't actually ask the families what they want. And I was able to speak to many survivors of crime who told me, you're wasting away in a cell doesn't actually do anything for me.
Yeah.
It doesn't bring me a sense of peace. It doesn't give me forgiveness. It doesn't help me with my grief. It's just you sitting in a box. You know what I want? I want this to stop once and for all. Can you contribute to the end of victimization in this country? And if you can do that, then you're one step closer to what I'm actually asking for. Once I figured that out, it completely changed my path. And I don't know about the guy who did not express remorse during the trial for you. I can tell you honestly that I was him, and I did not feel those things at the beginning. They were foreign to me. And I even blamed my victim for why I did what I did. It wasn't until years later when I started to have that awakening. And I truly hope that person has had that awakening for your sake. But I also want you to know that your grief process, it's okay that it's incremental. You know, it doesn't have to all happen at once. And today, if you experienced just a modicum of healing, then I feel like I've helped you in that way. And you've taken it one step closer to actually getting through that process of grief. So on behalf of him, I apologize for what's happened to you and your family. And I want you to know you're not alone. There's so many like me who are doing this work. And your brother is not forgotten, nor will he ever be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Eric. I mean, the courage, the vulnerability to really connect, to be on what seems like different sides and both show up with such openness and interest in healing together for ourselves and others. And what a special thing you two just brought to all of us to witness and be part of. What tremendous healing actually for every one of us. What I want to do here, because we're right at that time, right? With 3 minutes left in our session. I think Artie and Eric, you guided us right into the heart, right where we needed to be, you know, to continue with that. So what we'll do now is play one final clip, a closing clip, hand it to Yael to close us out. And just invite everyone to, like, in this moment of wrapping up, just like maybe put a hand on your heart or sense, you know, what you're bringing with you, ways you've opened during the session today. I'll play the clip, give you some time to also reflect, and then I'll pass it to Yael.
Leon, I really have to thank you so much, man, deeply from the bottom of my heart for agreeing to come and do this with me, to sit here and unpack a subject as heavy and complex as forgiveness. I have definitely benefited from your wisdom today. I certainly understand why it's important that we forgive. This is changing lives. This is really helping a lot of people. And as I always say, we want to give back to the communities that we come from. And what better point to come from than to come from a position of forgiveness? So be about that life, live that life. I thank you guys. I appreciate you.
I am Leon Ford, and I just got lessons from a lifer.
I'm going to hand it over to Yael, naming that like we're settling ourselves a little bit and closing the session, but we've also opened up a lot here. And we could sit here talking about this for many hours. We're going to try to come to a nice, cohesive community close here. So Yael, I'll pass it to you.
Hey, yeah, so let's just take the offerings, the love, the wisdom, the healing into our hearts with a breath in. And as we breathe out, we are moving this wisdom, this love, this healing out into the world. Breathing in all of these beautiful, beautiful treasures. Breathing out, connecting us and committing us to take this out into the world. A world that really desperately needs it. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Yael. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much. It's hard to take 90 minutes out of a day to dive into something so deep. Thank you to those of you who are on this call who've stayed with the whole time. Oh, thank you. We'll be sending out follow-up. We invite you to just take it easy today. You know, do what you need, take good care, follow up with other people in this community, share the love and learning. We hope to see you at the next one. Have a great rest of your day.